Consider this. How can you tell if someone is sad? What about happy? What about more subtle emotions like indifference, contempt, or jealousy? In the earliest days of cinema, the tableau style reigned supreme. A static camera captured the entire scene in one long wide shot. Actors mirrored the techniques of players who had been exaggerating their performance for millennia, so even the patrons in the furthest seats of the theater could read their performance. In the late 20s and 30s, close-ups started to gain prevalence. Subtle facial expressions or bodily twitches could now be clearly seen. The exaggerated theatrics of old became unnecessary and outdated. Now, the measure of a good performance is ironically based on fooling the audience into believing that the actor is not performing. So, the editor must work hand in hand with the director, actors, and producers to select and sequence clips that make their acting feel as real as possible.
Joe Walker, the invisible performer in the editing room, thank you.
In this lesson, we're going to deconstruct human facial expressions and body language. Our goal is to better understand the nuance of human expression, what people's mannerisms tell us about their thoughts and feelings. This will help us choose the best takes and performances to support the character's arc as the narrative progresses. We're going to examine how our brains work, what different mannerisms tell us, and how to build truthful performances. For most people, the body and face mirror how they feel. Why is it so hard to conceal feelings? Well, the human brain contains different structures, each with different functions, and we're going to focus briefly on two of them. The limbic system is our subconscious emotional center, and it controls our physical behavior. It's constantly on and hardwired directly into our nervous system. For example, if we're scared, we reflectively tense. The neocortex is where we do all of our conscious, creative, and critical thinking. For example, this is where we might decide what we want to say. Because the decision to lie or hide our feelings is an active choice, this is the part of our brain where deceptions are formed. You could say that truth and deception live in two separate parts of our brain. That's why when someone deliberately lies, the truth often subconsciously leaks out through their body language or facial expressions. Pinocchio's nose would lengthen when he lied. Sadly, in real life, it's not quite that simple. In 1984, the murderer Diane Downs was convicted of a brutal attack on her own children. She claimed they were shot by a carjacker, but note this interview. Her body language appears to tell a different story.
Maybe it'll fade too with time, but I don't think so. That haunts me the most.
Diane is feigning sadness, but you can see her smirk, revealing her excitement over deceiving others. Another example, cyclist Lance Armstrong denied doping allegations for years before finally admitting to his crimes. Watch his body language in this interview.
Do you deny the statements that Miss Andrew attributed to you in the Indiana University Hospital?
100%, absolutely.
Do you also deny what Mr. Andrew said regarding those statements?
100%.
Here, Lance vehemently denies cheating, but he seems to shake his head in disagreement with his own words. These subtle clues can help you decode what somebody's thinking. They don't tell the entire story, but they can provide clues. Take a lesson from 2005's Hitch.
60% of all human communication is nonverbal, body language. 30% is your tone. So that means that 90% of what you're saying ain't coming out of your mouth.
Our mannerisms are as complex and diverse as the language that we speak. It's a big topic. We can't cover everything, but let's dip our toes in. We'll start with the eyes. Often called the window to the soul, they are incredibly expressive, and they offer an insight into the working of our mind. Scanning eyes can show someone is processing their environment. Staring off into the distance can indicate that something else is on their mind. A furrowed brow can show thought, and a squint may indicate malicious intent. Wide eyes can show shock, and when someone's seeing something that they don't like, they'll often engage in eye blocking, that is, closing their eyes and tensing. They might look away from something disgusting, or even reveal contempt with a subtler glance away. On the other hand, eye contact can be interpreted as amorous, impolite, even aggressive. In short, what the eyes look at, or what they don't look at, tells us quite a bit about what someone is thinking. Mouths are also incredibly expressive. Even when it's not speaking, it's still talking to us. An open mouth shows shock. Pursed lips may show a question is being considered. Biting or withdrawing lips can indicate that someone wants to say something but is holding back. And when presented with something really unsavory, many will make a hard swallow. Often, heavy breathing can indicate adrenaline. Clenched teeth are a sign of anger or aggression. A smile generally indicates happiness, but be aware of forced smiles. As it happens, true smiles are actually best identified in the eyes. Hands and arms also tell us a lot about how someone feels. They can move all over the body. When someone feels uncomfortable, the arms and hands usually exhibit blocky behavior, a form of defense and self-comforting. In particular, people often cover their vulnerable neck and throat when they feel uncomfortable or threatened. Touching the hair might indicate awareness of someone else's attention. Placing hands on top of the head can indicate disbelief, but placing your head in your hands can indicate despair. Sometimes people completely cover their mouth as if to hold back their words. And other times, a finger on the lips or a hand on the chin might indicate thought. A clenched fist indicates anger, but an open hand is a sign of friendship. And an open hand can also indicate a question. Playing with hands or hair can indicate tension. And in some situations, the stretching of a hand can indicate the release of tension. Now, the body as a whole can also tell us a great deal. A person's posture may deflate when they feel depressed. Large size and stature are often an indication of confidence. Leaning forward, invading people's personal space, indicates not just confidence, but hostility too. A relaxed posture can indicate comfort, confidence, even respect. A stiff posture can show hostility, even in an apparently friendly relationship. Open hands invite an answer, but if you add shrugged shoulders, it shows confusion. Raising the chin shows confidence. Lowering it shows a lack of confidence. A lack of movement conveys fear, whereas an overabundance of movement shows nerves. Without a single word, the body and face are capable of communicating a broad spectrum of emotions, and we're only just starting to scratch the surface. Now that we're starting to build a repertoire of different mannerisms, let's look at how we can use them to build truthful performances that support our stories. We'll discuss 2 keys to building a truthful performance. First, avoiding lies. In the real world, we'd call somebody with untruthful body language a liar. In a movie, it means that maybe we don't have the best take. Take this example.
Anakin, I'm appointing you to be my personal representative on the Jedi Council.
Me? A master? I'm overwhelmed, sir.
Anakin says that he's overwhelmed, but his body language does not reflect that. In order to avoid on-screen lies, do your best to understand what emotions a character is feeling in each scene, and choose performances with complementary body language. When their performance sends a contradictory message, the audience is going to see bad acting. Also, beware of performances that seem overly forced or overly rehearsed.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hey, Johnny, what's up?
I have a problem with Lisa. She said that I hit her.
What? Well, did you?
No, it's not true. Don't even ask. What's new with you?
Well, I'm just sitting up here thinking, you know?
Now, let's break down scene 11 from our film Chapman. In this scene, Alex, Paul, and Marie reunite in a field after being away from each other for a while. As their love triangle is central to the plot of this film, it's important to establish tension early in the movie. Alex and Marie have previously shared some level of a romantic attachment. How they react in this scene is going to tell us how they still feel about each other.
You lost?
I don't think so. I saw a Holt construction sign up there.
Rich Holt's my dad.
Oh, you're taller than I expected. And Alex?
Marie?
Look at you, muscle man.
I'm not. Shut up. Shut up.
I told you I was gonna meet my dad this summer, but you didn't believe me.
Paul, you remember Marie?
Let's look through the dailies to choose which clip that we're going to cut to next.
Come on, you get one too.
Hey.
You get one too.
Cut. Got it.
Come on, you get one too. So, hot out, huh?
Yeah, he's out here working for my dad.
So we've got three options here. Which option would you choose? Marie's body language is pretty consistent in all three shots. Notice her eye blocking, how she avoids eye contact and looks away, her unsure hands, and her self-conscious glance towards Alex. She's evidently concealing something from him. However, Paul's body language does offer some subtle variation. In shot A, his body language is neutral and doesn't reveal too much. In B, his glance towards Alex seems almost cocky. In option C, he glances quickly towards Alex, but then immediately engages in eye blocking, looking downwards. A negative sign that may signify some shame and some deceit, probably because he's been flirting with Marie when he knows that Alex has a crush on her. So, which would you choose? The final edit went with option C, because while Marie's performance didn't vary much between takes, Paul's was the strongest in this one, indicating his shame and deceit most clearly.
Come on, you get one too.
Next, you're going to want to use gateway emotions. These are the emotions you might see at first as a character begins to process their feelings. Once you've identified truthful performances, they must be assembled in a truthful order. You see, the mind does not operate instantly. It takes time for the character to absorb facts, process them, and then make decisions. They may even progress through several emotions before settling. For example, look at this scene from the film Inception. DiCaprio's character goes through a range of emotions as he receives new information in this scene. He goes from shock to confusion to realization to sadness. On-screen emotional transformations like these are what bring a character to life in the eyes of the audience, as we feel their emotions along with them. Now, let's break down scene 43 from the film Chapman, in which Alex makes a romantic move on his childhood crush, Marie. We'll focus on Marie's reaction in this scene. It's going to become clear that she's not completely sure how to react to his advances. Gateway emotions are critical to making this moment believable. Let's look through the dailies to see which clip we should cut to next.
Alex. Just not ready yet. Alex. I'm just not ready.
Yeah.
So both options show Marie's gateway emotions that lead her to rejection of Alex. Shock, then realization, and then just a resolute no. But which do you think shows the journey best? In our opinion, option B really shines. Those emotions are given more time to play out, and they're more clearly indicated by Marie's body language. Note how she recoils in shock, the blocking behavior of her arms as she struggles to avoid physical contact. She freezes as she processes the moment, and then finally holds back her words.
Alex.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Alex.
No, it's all right. It's okay.
At a fine restaurant, a sommelier helps diners to select the best wine to complement their meal. He or she has a deep understanding of the wine's characteristics and how they're going to work well together in harmony. An editor needs a similar skill set. The actor's performance must work in harmony with the story. Facial expressions and body language are as nuanced as fine wine. Understanding their finer subtleties is going to help the editor select the right performance for the right moment. Words are powerful, but they are the result of conscious thought. Facial expressions and body language originate in our subconscious. Therefore, even if we don't speak our mind, our mannerisms will. Coming up in the next lesson, we'll be diving into the world of film story structure, a very important topic. All right, I'll see you in a bit. Editing is often thought of as the final rewrite of a film. For that reason, it's critically important to understand the various ingredients needed to craft an engaging and compelling story. Unfortunately, the elements of story structure are often labeled with somewhat archaic and confusing terminology that makes them difficult to comprehend and remember. The belly of the whale, meeting of the goddess, the threshold guardians. That's all pretty abstract. In this lesson, we're going to be teaching you all about the structure of a classic Hollywood screenplay while doing our best to speak plainly and clearly in modern words that you can fully understand, and then ultimately translate this knowledge into the storytelling of your edit. So let's look at the structure of a film as a whole first, broken into 3 simple acts. Act 1 can be thought of as the beginning, which takes place in the ordinary world. This act will contain everything that happens to your main character as they prepare to embark on their journey of transformation in the film. Act 2 can be thought of as the middle, which takes place in the special world. This is where your character's journey begins, and they set off on their mission to achieve some goal, find some truth, or obtain something they desire. This is where most of the conflict in the film will occur. And Act 3 can be thought of as the end, where the character returns to their ordinary world where they began after having completed their journey and changed in some meaningful way. Okay, so let's break all this down into some more detail. We're going to be looking at something called the hero's journey. This journey originally consisted of 17 stages from beginning to end when it was laid out by Joseph Campbell, an American professor of literature at Sarah Lawrence College in New York. It was later shortened to 12 steps by screenwriter Christopher Vogler, with many of the stages being renamed in ways that are much more understandable by the average person. We'll be looking at the hero's journey through this 12-stage lens, primarily using the 2010 drama The Social Network. This is a film about the creation of Facebook, and it follows the journey of Mark Zuckerberg from when he first came up with the social networking site in college, all the way to it becoming an online behemoth. Alright, let's begin at the beginning. At the start of Act 1, we open up in the ordinary world, sometimes referred to as the setup. This is where we meet our main character, doing what they typically do. Now, what they typically do might involve seeing them at home in the morning making breakfast for their family. Or maybe their version of ordinary is hanging off the side of an airplane while it's taking off, like Ethan Hunt's character in the opening scene of Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. It's not typical for us, but for them, it's just another day in the office. This is our starting point. In The Social Network, we first meet Mark at a bar with his girlfriend, Erica. They're talking about college-related matters, and we learn that he's very smart, but also awkward, irritable, and vindictive. We also see him traveling through campus and then coming home alone to hide out in his room. This is Mark's ordinary world. Next, we have the call to adventure. This stage can also be thought of as the inciting incident, a term you're probably familiar with. This beat of the film beckons the protagonist to embark on some journey that will, in the end, profoundly change their life, whether for better or for worse. The call to adventure is something that upsets the balance in their ordinary world. In this film, this occurs when Erica dumps Mark, which incites him to create a website that rates the attractiveness of girls at his college. The site becomes so popular that it ultimately crashes the school's servers. Mark realizes that he might be onto a great idea, and this serves as the catalyst for everything that comes next. Next, we have the refusal of the call. This is exactly what it sounds like. Typically, the protagonist will resist the call to adventure, the reluctant hero, so to speak. By including a story point where the hero appears to hesitate to take on the challenge set before them, it gives the audience the opportunity to realize that it must be done, and it must be done specifically by them. The hero's importance is elevated in our eyes, and they become special in a sense. Here, the refusal of the call is actually a bit weak. In a short sequence, Mark is put on academic probation because his new website crashes the campus servers, and we also learn that most of the girls in the school hate him. These events have him questioning whether moving forward on this path is a great idea. But this is very quickly resolved when the Winklevoss twins want to team up with him on the creation of an even bigger social site, and he almost immediately agrees. The next stop on the Story Structure Express is the meeting of the mentor. This is one of those potentially cryptic phrases, but it's actually pretty understandable. This is the moment where our main character receives some help, advice, or even an object that's going to help them out on their journey. The mentor's job is to prepare the protagonist for entering the special world and embarking on their challenging adventure. Mark happens to meet his mentor, Eduardo, at a college party. He proposes his new website idea and asks for funding. Eduardo agrees and becomes a sounding board, advisor, and a cheerleader for the project. At this point, it's important to double-check that you've clearly established the central conflict of the film, and you've shown the audience a bit about the character that they're going to be following on this journey. Be sure you've crafted the edit and chosen the takes that reveal the character's personality, their backstory, and their future hopes and dreams. This is also the time by which the central dramatic question should have been clearly established. The central dramatic question is the primary conflict and goal that's driving the hero. Will the boy get the girl? Will the hero slay the dragon? Will the detective catch the killer? This question should be clear to the viewer before the end of Act 1. And it's often introduced at the call to adventure, or the inciting incident. The central dramatic question in The Social Network is, will Mark succeed in taking his social network site all the way and turning it into something big? So now here we are at the end of Act 1. We've seen the ordinary world of our protagonist. They've experienced their call to adventure with an inciting incident. They hesitated a bit with the refusal of the call, and finally they met their mentor, who will support them on their upcoming journey. And this is where Act 2 takes off. Act 2 begins with the next stage, known as crossing the threshold. This is where our hero commits to their adventure or challenge, and they get started. It's important to point out that this stage doesn't always involve physically leaving to go from one place to another. Of course it can, like in the movie Up, when Carl unleashes the balloons attached to his house and flies off to South America. But it can also be another form of commitment to their journey, like when Mark and Eduardo's website becomes a hit on campus, and then Mark decides that he wants to expand it to other colleges. Next, we have tests, allies, and enemies. This stage is also referred to as the Road of Trials. This is where your character is going to be tested as they face a series of obstacles that they ultimately have to overcome. Part of the satisfaction of a good story is watching a character transform and evolve. These are the trials that are going to help them do exactly that, while introducing new friends and foes along the way. In the case of The Social Network, Mark is on his journey of trying to grow his company into something big, the test, and he meets Sean Parker, his new ally, while dealing with Eduardo's hesitance and more conservative ideas for expansion, along with the progressing threat of the Winklevoss twins, all his enemies. Next up, we have the approach to the inmost cave. A more straightforward way to think of this is nearing the big challenge. This inmost cave could be an actual physical location where the protagonist needs to go to accomplish their goal. Or it could be more of a metaphorical cave, referring to a big internal struggle that they haven't been able to overcome yet. In this story, Mark realizes that he must move to Silicon Valley, hire interns, and then somehow secure funding in order for Facebook to become a success. Basically, he needs to double down and fully commit. Next, we have the stage known as the ordeal. You can also think of this as the hero's big challenge. This is that inmost cave that they've recently been approaching. This ordeal is going to be his or her greatest test, and will ultimately be where the hero either sinks or swims. In The Social Network, Mark must deal with the constant tug of war between Eduardo and Parker about how to grow the company. Ultimately, Eduardo decides that things are moving too fast and he feels threatened by Parker, which causes him to freeze the Facebook bank accounts and send Mark momentarily to rock bottom. Everything is on the line here, and this will be the hero's biggest moment. All of this is leading us to our next stage, the reward. This stage is often simultaneous with the climax of the film, and it's simply where the hero gets what they've been after the whole time. Now, it's important to point out here that the climax of a film is the peak of the drama, the high point, but it doesn't always mean that the plot is fully resolved. A simple climax would be a hero slaying a dragon. Sword, dragon, done. That's pretty straightforward. But many climaxes are more complicated than that. In the case of The Social Network, even though our hero, Mark, has gotten what he's been after the whole time, major funding to grow the company, there are still some pretty serious loose ends. He's got some lawsuits and some very angry business partners, which could totally undermine everything that he's been working for. Resolving important remaining plot points like these is the function of the next few stages in Act 3. We begin Act 3 with the road back. You might think of this stage as one last obstacle. While the primary goal or mission has been achieved, there are still some loose ends to tie up before they can fully re-enter the ordinary world where they started. If you remember, before Mark seized his reward and secured funding to grow his company, his business partner Eduardo had frozen their funds when he was the sole source providing them at the time. Mark has to decide how to deal with Eduardo for these past wrongs, and then prevent Eduardo from having the power to do anything similar in the future. So he comes up with a legal maneuver to basically screw Eduardo out of his shares of the company. This event effectively mirrors the crossing the threshold moment at the beginning of the film, where he and Eduardo originally decided to join forces to create the website. So our story is almost over, and we've reached the resurrection stage. You can think of this as a moment where the hero's transformation in the story is finally revealed, as they come out the other side of their journey having changed in some meaningful way. In the case of Mark's resurrection, Facebook is celebrating its big success with a 1 million users party. This is also where Mark has his final showdown with Eduardo, revealing how he's massively diluted his ownership in the company, and essentially cuts him out of his life for good. And then finally during this stage, Sean Parker gets caught with cocaine at a party, which allows Mark to get rid of him as well. Mark is now the wolf on the hill. Any Pumping Iron fans out there? And finally, we reach our last stage of the hero's journey, the return with the elixir. Since that doesn't make much sense, I would suggest thinking of this as the aftermath. This is where we see the hero back safe and sound in their ordinary world, having transformed themselves, and typically also the world around them. It's their new reality. In Mark's world, he's settled all of his lawsuits and he's back in control of Facebook. The amount he had to pay to get rid of his enemies turns out to be a pretty insignificant amount compared to the enormous value of his now very successful company. Our hero has won, and he's alone again, just like where he started when he received the call to adventure back when he was working on Face Mash in college. He also reaches a point of self-realization that he doesn't have to act in the same negative way towards others as he had done throughout his journey. And we've come full circle, back to our ordinary world, with our hero back from his adventure having changed. Now, keep in mind that not every film will have every stage of this journey. For example, if you've got a story with a very simple climax, like we said before, slaying a dragon, that's going to wrap up the plot points in a clean way, and you probably won't have as much going on in the road back and the resurrection stages. And of course, some films are built around structures that play with time, or follow the journeys of large ensemble casts, and countless other variations. However, this 12-stage structure of the hero's journey is by far the most common story format that you're going to come across, and learning it is going to serve you very well. Now, if all of this was a lot to absorb, or maybe you just want a quick summary that you can easily remember, let me show you one last thing. For the simplest, most fundamental explanation of story structure in film, we can look at writer Dan Harmon's excellent and very down-to-earth list of 8 elements. First, a character is in a zone of comfort. Second, that character wants something. They enter an unfamiliar situation, adapt to it, get what they wanted, but pay a heavy price for it, and ultimately they return full circle back to their familiar situation, having changed. Story structure is not some arbitrary formula. It mimics our own lives and the way that we process satisfying stories in our minds. Have a look at this short film from Pixar called Piper. A little ocean bird named Piper is afraid of the water, so her mom always brings her food. Stage 1. A character is in a zone of comfort. But she wants to go and get it for herself and help her family. Stage 2. That character wants something. So she decides to head to the water. Stage 3. They enter an unfamiliar situation. She gets comfortable and starts to enjoy herself. Stage 4. They adapt to it. And gets the food she was looking for. Stage 5. Get what they wanted. Now, if a kid were writing this, they'd probably end the story here, at the climax or the reward stage, and that's totally fine. But most viewers enjoy a little bit more depth and character transformation that happens in the last 3 stages. So the story continues. Things aren't as simple as she thought, and a big wave comes crashing down and scares her. Stage 6. Pay a heavy price for getting what she wanted. But when the wave pushes her underwater, she sees all the good food on the ocean floor and returns to tell her mother. Stage 7. Ultimately, they return full circle back to their familiar situation, and she shows her how good she is at finding food for everyone and helping out. Stage 8. Having changed. As you can see, these 8 stages are by far the simplest explanation of story structure that we can learn. And if you committed nothing else to memory except for this, you'd have a greater understanding of story than the vast majority of editors. So this lesson is going to have some optional homework. Using the PDF worksheet below the lesson, analyze another story structure, maybe a favorite film or even your own project or script. Again, this is optional, but breaking down a film on your own is very helpful in learning to recognize the various stages of story. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to look at an overview of the project that we're going to be editing in this course. All right, I'll see you in a bit. All right, so let's take a look at the project that we'll be working on together throughout this course. We've provided you with the dailies from a full feature-length dramatic film called Chapman. During the upcoming lessons, we'll be guiding you through the process of using these dailies to construct a roughly 90-minute feature on your timeline. The lessons will be a combination of instructional lecture to provide you with a knowledge base for each skill, and then hands-on editing, where we'll either demonstrate or deconstruct each edit so you can follow along and cut the film together with us. Because a feature is so long and some scenes are very straightforward, we won't be making you watch every single edit of every single scene. That would get repetitive and boring really fast. Instead, we've selected scenes to edit together that contain a variety of styles and also allow you to practice a variety of techniques. All the dailies for scenes that we don't edit together are still available in the downloads, and you'll be able to cut together as many or as few of them as you like. As with all our courses, you can follow along using any editing software package you prefer. Some of the later lessons will also include some specific graphic techniques that you may want to do in After Effects, and some techniques on color grading in DaVinci Resolve. Though these are both optional, most editing software is going to be able to perform very similar functions. Your instructors for this course will be myself, Chris, along with one of our senior trainers, Brian. We'll be the voices behind the monitor guiding you through the lessons. The information and techniques that you're going to learn have been contributed by us along with the entire FEP team with a range of consulting editors, screenwriters, artists, and composers. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to start by walking you through where to download all the files for the course, along with some recommendations on what to download first. All right, I'll see you in a bit.